Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just gonna let everybody join and before we get started with our webinar today, and we're gonna be talking about how to best navigate your business through these challenging times. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll kind of get started just here in a couple minutes. My name is Risa Eldon, and I'm here on behalf of Houzz. I am the head of industry partnerships. Here at Houzz, we offer an all-in-one solution that empowers home remodeling and design professionals to stand out, win more clients, and manage their projects efficiently and profitably. And today, joining me, I have the pleasure of being joined by Julia Molloy, who is a business consultant with over 15 years exclusively dedicated to consulting with home remodeling design professionals and clients across the globe. Julia is the founder of Bold Summit and has played a pivotal role in establishing best practices for the home remodeling industry. Julia offers tools, business systems, and consulting packages that help professionals level up their businesses and truly reach their potential. And Julia, thank you so much for giving us your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here today.
Great, great. So let's just wait a couple more minutes, guys. And one kind of housekeeping thing, if you do have questions, we will try to get to them. We have a presentation prepared for you, but under the there's a gray button that says questions. You can drop your questions in there. Go ahead and let us know where you're joining from, where you're visiting from, and we'll get started here in just a little bit. And I see if you have any technical stuff going on, I will try to respond to you while Julia is presenting. I see lots of different people joining from Austin, Atlanta, Philly, Connecticut, LA. It looks like we have Michigan, Texas, Santa Monica, wow, Vancouver, Montana. So all across, wow, San Francisco. I'm in San Francisco too. Yeah, stuff in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
Well, I am from Santa Monica. LA is my town. I still have my 310 on my phone. West Side girl. Oh, God.
Awesome. So if you have any technical stuff, feel free to chime in. I will try to get to that. Lots of messages coming in, and it looks like it's just 3 minutes past 9:30 here, Pacific Standard Time, probably different time for everybody else. And I think we'll go ahead and maybe wait one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get
one more minute.
Yeah.
Little grace period, 4-minute grace period.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you who we understand that you might have kids at home, you might not be able to watch the entire recording right now. We are recording this, so we can always send you a link after the presentation is complete.
Got it.
Great.
Yeah, it's been really interesting up here doing homeschooling, and you know, my son, he's 11, he's 5th grade, and you know, he's actually been on and off sick with fever and cold. So I'm like, oh my God, does he have it? You know. He can't get tested. There's no way. There's just like there's 40 kits a day here in Oregon. So, but he doesn't have it. He's fine. But it's been really interesting being at home and homeschooling and running a business, and I know everyone is kind of going through that at the same time. But it's interesting because you know, as weird as all of this is and stressful, there's also quite a silver lining in that we're really connecting with people in ways that we haven't, and spending time with family. And I mean, I don't think I've had a lot of extra time. Like I hear everyone, like I've been busy. I know you've been busy. I'm like, who's slow?
Yeah. No, it's craziness. All right. Well, let me go ahead and I want to reintroduce you to those attendees that are just joining, and then we'll go ahead and get started here, and we will try to get to all of your questions. I know last week I tried my hardest. So really, we're launching this resilience series on behalf of Houzz. We have Julia Molloy with us today because we really want to support you through this process and give you education and tips on what you can be doing. So my name is Risa Eldon. I'm the head of industry partnerships here at Houzz. We offer an all-in-one solution that empowers home remodeling and design professionals to stand out, win more clients, and manage their projects efficiently and profitably. And I'm so grateful for Julia Molloy to be joining us, who is a business consultant with over 15 years of experience. And she has played a pivotal role in establishing best practices for the home remodeling industry while offering tools, business systems, and consulting packages that help professionals level up their businesses and truly reach their potential. So Julia, without further ado, I will let you go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you so much, Risa, for asking me to be here today. It is an honor and quite a weird set of circumstances that we're all dealing with for the first time on a global scale, which is kind of scary, but it's also, in my view, you know, kind of a blessing, because I think it's a reminder and a wake-up call for all of humanity that we are all one, and we are all part of the larger ecosystem, and what we do affects everyone else. So I think there are some gifts to be had there, and I hope that we carry them through this and onto the other side, because it's really it's a pretty pivotal moment in humanity. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of, you know, this last few weeks I've been playing a role with my clients and the design community at large, helping everyone to kind of make sense of all of this and kind of see the bigger picture and understand where people are, where they fit in kind of the broad scope view of interior design industry and home remodeling industry, and what that means in terms of how to navigate their firm. So you have a lot of difficult choices to kind of to make over the next few weeks. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to scroll through here. So the main thing here is just going through, and let me close that, short-term and long-term decisions. And what I've seen so far is that a lot of people are kind of bulking everything together and trying to make decisions, and it's really difficult because there are so many unknowns. But I want to break that down a little bit so that you can actually make some assumptions, and based on those assumptions, then move forward accordingly and just get some clarity around things. So we are going to be talking about A and B scenarios and kind of where you fit in the spectrum, and then long-term or short-term action items, and then long-term planning and action items, so that you can kind of move forward accordingly. I want to start by breaking this out into two pieces, because right now we're like, we don't know how long it's going to last. How do I plan for something that is so out of our control and really not very clear at all? It is an organic thing. So, but what we can do is look at indicators out there and make some assumptions. Okay, so I see it in two different scenarios, and we've got scenario A and scenario B. Okay, scenario A is where, you know, this kind of passes and we're all like not in lockdown anymore in a month, 2 months, and certainly by 3 months we begin to see the rebound in all of the industries, where things kind of start to begin to look a little bit more normal. So that is best case scenario. That is our plan A. So that is something that you want to do like a situational track on. And then I do think we need to look at what could possibly be the alternative, which is a plan B, which looks more like a 6 to 12 month period of, you know, disruption. Okay. Now, the two scenarios that would feed into the 6 to 12 month deal is that we go on lockdown longer. I know that France is locked down until I think end of July is what I saw. So it could go longer than we would like. And also the other scenario would be where we are not in lockdown for a while, but then come winter or fall, we have to go back into quarantine, which is not ideal. But in that situation, both those scenarios, we're looking at a 6 to 12 month kind of disruption in the industry, which is a little bit different than what we experienced back in 2008. When 2008 hit, I had been in industry. I'd kind of been the business manager for an interior design firm in Beverly Hills for a few years, and then went out and started doing consulting for designers in LA and California. And I had been doing it for about four or 5 years at that point. And I was blessed enough to be able to serve many different kinds of companies and helping them with process flow, organization, staffing, and all of those kind of back of house, and even some front facing, like, you know, signature experience kind of stuff, but really helping them to navigate their firm in kind of all different kinds of scenarios. And I worked with very small firms that were serving low, you know, what we would consider low end, you know, one room, you know, remodels to, you know, their clients were hotels and, you know, huge estates. So I was able to see what worked and what didn't work in various different kinds of not only client sectors, but also different types of firms with every permutation of interior design firm and, you know, home industry firm. So what that did was when, you know, we made it through 2008, 2009, I was able to really get a lot of data points about what worked and what didn't work, who thrived and who, you know, fell off the radar and had to reboot or go out of business. And so I'm kind of assembling a lot of that information into kind of how I see the current situation and how some of that experience applies to what we're seeing today. Now, that was really purely economic, and we are experiencing economic downturn, but it is because of, you know, the virus, which makes it a little bit different, something we haven't actually experienced. But what I can say is that my projection is that unlike, you know, a slow economic revival, what we're going to see is more of an immediate bump as soon as, you know, things open up and the world becomes a healthier place. So that's kind of good. We're not looking at such a slow trajectory upward. But that being said, it's important not to take all different kinds of companies and bundle them together and then try to navigate your own company based on that. I want you to break yourself out into a segment of, you know, the business strata, okay? And how I see it and how I see everything breaking out is in terms of who you serve, okay? So who you serve will determine short and long-term business strategies and how you have to pivot either right now and or later on, okay? So we're gonna start with low to mid client echelon. Now, I've got this question about, well, what does that mean? How much is the budget? And, you know, how do you know if you're in that sector or any of these sectors? And I would say, because I work with people around the globe, there is no number that I can give you that would be applicable to everyone on this call, okay? But what I can say is that, you know, they tend to be smaller projects, maybe one rooms, less like actual structural work and more interiors. And if it's more than one room, they tend to be phased. And there is usually, at least nowadays, more of an element of a DIY kind of component where you're helping them, guiding them, buying some things, they're buying some things on their own, you know, maybe through Houzz. But that you kind of know if you're in that demographic in your local region or the region that you serve, okay? And what we've seen is the shift in this demographic has been very clear. There's really, you know, the trajectory is the same. It does not change. This whole thing has not really changed it, except for one thing. It has sped it up. So what is happening because of the coronavirus is what was going to happen anyway, okay? It's just in an instant, okay? So we have seen already, and the industry, all the industry, and, you know, home goods and the home industry as a whole has already adapted and been moving toward online. So it's just happening. It happened really fast. So any kind of in-home kind of stuff has, for the short term, has stopped for the most part. And we are really just seeing a domination of online service and consultation, and e-design and buying products online. So that really hasn't changed. It's just, you know, the situation has exacerbated it. Now, in terms of the long-term view on this, your pivot for short-term will be very similar to your pivot long-term. There's not a lot of difference, except you're just going to build your systems and your business around really doing larger volume, selling more product online, sourcing product online, certainly, and doing more consultation via internet, webcam, Zoom, you know what the technology out there, and that will be evolving as well. Now moving over to the mid-high to high client echelon. Again, this segment of the market, I've been saying for about 7 years now, is going to disappear because I think most of the people on this call will relate to this idea of this demographic that wants quality, they want white glove service, and they really are very price conscious. And that combination puts the service provider in a pressure cooker, because you can't sustain the quality and the service while still providing a very low price. You can't compete and make money at the same time. So I have been seeing this bisect essentially, and this situation has really sped that process up as well. So short term, you are seeing that if you're in a mid-high sector and most of your clients are in that demographic, you know, at least 50% of your projects have either been paused, you know, or put on hold indefinitely or canceled, okay? And that's, you know, a pretty scary place to be. And the ones that have stayed on, really, any service, any projects you're finishing up, you're doing e-design right now because everyone's on lockdown for the most part. Even, you know, a week or two ago, it was a little different depending on where you were in the country, but I think for the most part, everyone is just staying home, which is really wise. So you're having to adapt really quickly to what the kind of low and mid client echelon has been already doing en masse, okay? But now this demographic has to really do it. So doing, you know, e-design, consultations, and meetings via online, you know, webcam kind of software, video conferencing. And also your service offering is going to change a little bit for the short term, not necessarily long term, but for the short term, you need to be looking at what you can do to help them with their current needs now. So their needs a month or two ago are different than their needs now, for at least the short term, okay? So you're gonna have to make a pivot for the short term and then look at long term as a second decision-making process and how you want to adjust permanently, okay? We're gonna talk about some ideas about what those clients need right now. And I'm just gonna say, just to plant that seed, you know, home office, being comfortable right now with the family on top of each other, getting your video conferencing and technology in place so that you really can function well and connect with everyone digitally and be productive in your own home, as a lot of people are working remotely. I do believe that's going to be a thing now. I don't think everyone's moving back into offices. So those of you who serve commercial, they're going to be retooling their business because they're going to realize it's efficient, it's more cost effective, and they can actually function really well having less people coming into the office. Okay, so we'll talk about some of those opportunities in more depth in a little bit. Now, long term, for the mid, high to high client echelon, you are looking at the most change, this mid section. So you are going to need to adjust to the fact that a good majority of this demographic is literally going away. Now, we were saying that all along for many years, but again, this situation has sped everything up. So now it's not another 5 years. It's like happening now. So they're either, most people are going to go to the methodologies and quite possibly budgets of the low and mid client echelon and move everything digital and move everything online. Most of them will do that. Then there's a smaller section that is going to be moving more toward the very high to elite level, and they're going to be approaching it from an experiential standpoint, low stress, everything, you know, just laid out, and really having it be an elevated experience, not just I need the stuff and, you know, can you help me make choices kind of approach. Okay. And moving on to the very high to elite client echelon. This, as with the last recession, really every economic downturn, this is the segment that for the most part is affected the least long term. Now, that being said, short term, there are, like the stock market goes on, their net worth goes down, it gets a little sketchy for a while. But a lot of these people in this demographic have long, like, you know, huge assets, they have family money, they, you know, are very secure no matter what's happening on the surface in terms of the economy. Right now, a lot of those projects are slowed down or stopped, really mainly because of the environmental factors. Like, you know, people can't go on the job site, you can't go out shopping. So what you're doing is, for the ones that are able to move forward, to keep that moving, you are, like all of these sectors, moving toward just using digital format. So instead of going to the store and shopping or looking at selections, you're Zoom calling or whatever the showroom, and they're showing you, and they're like, okay, we would like that one up there, pull that, and making selections and things like that remotely. Having your meetings remote, which again, I think is absolutely the way of the future anyway. The change now has actually really prompted that digital shift into the very high and elite level sector, where it wouldn't have certainly very quickly, but it is now, and that will stick. Now, long term, for the very high to elite level, not a lot of change, and we saw this in 2008. What I predict is that as soon as everything is lifted and starting to feel a little bit normal, we're going to have a huge spending splurge. And I think to a certain extent, it's all relative across all sectors of the market, because, you know, you're going to want to go out to dinner. Like, we've been like holding on to everything for so long. So there's going to be this like, oh my God, we're free. And there will be a surge in spending, but then it will wind down and kind of normalize. The main difference in the way that demographic is going to change is it will, for probably a while, be a little bit less flamboyant and obvious. People, just like in 2008 and 9, there were a lot of very high level projects happening still. They didn't stop them. They were just a little bit more quiet about it, because they don't want to be like, you know, they don't want to be that person like, oh, I'm building this thing, you know. So they will be just a little bit more quiet about it, but it will still be happening. That money still will be flowing. But what will stay the same is high level service, certainly impeccable quality, but some of these things that were normally done in person are really just going to be done remotely, which is wise. These people are traveling a lot. I've been recommending this for years. Like, let's make it easy on ourselves. Let's just go onto an online platform instead of meeting in person all the time. So anyway, that's how I see it. And I think it's helpful to break it out like this for your own company and figure out kind of what sector you are focused on and you will serve long term. Okay. Now, short-term protection. We're just gonna like hunker down for a little bit. There's a couple things that are in place, and I'm sure everyone's been up on it, but I just wanted to mention it for those who you know, haven't been in the know in this regard. A couple weeks ago, there were only certain states that were kind of considered disaster areas for the SBA. Now it's literally the whole country, the United States and all its territories. So they've implemented not only the typical like disaster relief loans, which are still going on, you know, very large loans potentially, but what they have implemented across the board is at least a $10,000 grant for all small businesses essentially. And I think they're counting small businesses as 500 and less, which, you know, 500 is a really, to me, that's a pretty large company. So certainly in this industry anyway. So at the very least, get that $10,000 grant. You will not have to repay it. In the scope of business, it's not a lot of money, but it is free money. And it's certainly for those who are really hit hard, the low and mid levels of the home industry is hit really hard. So that 10K does make a difference. And there are also different regulations and incentives going on in terms of banks and loaning institutions that are helping them to give loans out more readily to small businesses where they were a little bit tighter in that earlier. So I would be really paying attention to the things happening in your state and certainly nationwide in terms of small business support, okay? And go to your local bank and see what you qualify for. Now, speaking of qualifying, it depends on how your company is set up, but if you're a small enough company, there's a good chance that you may actually, even though you're a business owner, you may actually qualify for unemployment. So you need to look at the rules in your region and federally and see what you qualify for. The whole idea is to shore up as much short-term capital as you possibly can so you don't go into panic mode, so you have a little bit that will help you coast. And right now, we don't know how long we're going to have to coast. So that's why I'm saying just hunker down a little bit and see what programs you qualify for, okay? Now, short-term business development action steps. Beyond
Julia,
just...
can I interrupt you for a second? We had a question on that slide because I think there's a lot of, we need some clarification.
Okay.
So one of the questions was, isn't the SBA grant just an advanced loan? Can you get the $10,000 without the loan? Like, is it a grant? Is it a loan? It's confusing.
So, well, I mean, go to the site because, I'm not the expert on the SBA, but from what I've heard and what I've read and what I can ascertain from the website at this point, I have not filed. I've been like literally in webinars. I'm like, I gotta do that. But there are the loans which have been in effect for disaster relief areas. Now those disaster relief areas expanded to nationwide. So you can still apply for the loan, but to my understanding, they have the new program, which is a $10,000, it's technically a grant. You do not have to repay that $10,000. And you do not have to apply for a larger SBA disaster relief loan. It's literally a separate entity and you can apply for both or one, either or kind of thing.
Okay.
Double check. I go to sba.org and then there should be a banner that pops up that says COVID-19 disaster relief, and there's a lot of information on that. And it's really easy to apply once you get on that website, and it just pops, you click on the right button and it pops up the form right there for you.
Okay, and then the second question about this, are the grants for small businesses only for those with employees?
That I am not sure because they've gone back and forth and they've changed the rules on that. So what was the case, that was the case a week or two ago. I mean, I think I looked last Thursday and they didn't even have all of this. But I would go there, like literally it changes by the day. I don't think you have to have employees now for a small business, but it depends on what kind of business you are. If you're an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, sole proprietor. So those factors change, and it also changes the unemployment. So I'm not sure their little formula for that, but fill in your own stats and see what comes up.
Got it. And then if you are self-employed, can you qualify for unemployment?
I don't know.
And these are hard questions. We are going to be doing something with an employment lawyer, so I do want to like public service announcement that Julia is not an attorney.
Yeah. I mean, but what I'm seeing on there, and this is actually really new, and this is with the stimulus package. So, you know, I guess I need to do a little bit more research, but I do know that several of my clients around the country have been able to qualify for unemployment, and they're small. They're like, they're sole proprietors. I mean, they might have a part-time person. So I don't know how they file, and if they're part-time person, a 1099 or an actual employee. So there's some, you know, really fine lines there, and you have to kind of figure out how they're going to see your company based on how you file your taxes and kind of how you've registered your company, your entity, so to speak.
Got it. There's a lot of comments coming on, and I'm trying to keep up with all of them. But also keep in mind, there's maybe people joining here from, we're specifically speaking to the United States and Canada. Obviously, it's different.
Right.
And just to be clear, definitely go to the website. Because there's so many comments coming in here. And
they are literally changing. I mean, it changed from last week to this week, you know, for real. Like the end of last week was different than it was today, you know. So literally just go to the SBA and literally just, I mean, it has buttons like how do you file, like just click the correct buttons for your company and it'll start showing to you.
Yeah. One of our clients here is messaging and saying there's been no final determination if the SBA loan will have the forgiveness factor. The $10,000 is an advance emergency loan that may be forgiven. It changes daily. So exactly to Julie's.
Like last time I was looking at it, it was like does not, literally on the SBA website says does not have to be repaid. So to me, that's like a grant, you know, it's, but they are shifting that daily. So you know, you're just going to have to file and see what you qualify for and see what they'll give you.
Yeah, and of course, if you paid yourself a paycheck with which deducts taxes, you can. I assume when somebody's chiming in here that you can apply for unemployment even as a sole proprietor. So again, like check with your attorney, check with your accountant of what your specific situation is.
Right, and that's a really nice way to look at it, because if you have a company, an entity that is separate from your personal entity, and you pay yourself an employment paycheck and take out employment tax, you are technically an employee, even if you're a sole proprietor. So, but it does matter, I think, how you file. I know for S Corps and C Corps, that's very easy because it's really two separate things, and you really are like an employee versus a sole proprietor and LLC. It gets a little bit different. So you just have to go on there, fill in your info, and see what pops up for you.
Great. I'll let you continue and stop interrupting.
Okay. Any questions in general so far or comments? Anything I should address before I move forward?
There are questions, but I think this is like in general questions. I think we'll let you keep going, and then
okay. We can address some of those at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope everything is making sense to you guys so far. So moving on to kind of the business development side and what you need to be looking at short term. One thing I would strongly recommend for everyone to do right now is to get very clear on your brand's purpose. Now, I know that that sounds like, well, that's maybe not what I'm supposed to be doing, but in this time of disruption, basically the puzzle pieces are just burst open. And this is when you really have to dissect your business, what your brand is about, what its role in the larger scope and its community is, and literally why you do what you do. And I talk about this in branding and client experience, and this is all really good stuff to do anyway. And many of you, I'm sure, have done it, but I want you to relook at that because as everything shifts, you'll be surprised. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more broad than you were before. It might require a little bit of shifting, but it's going to be something like, you know, helping, you know, people to live their best life in their home or something kind of like that. I don't want that purpose to be about your deliverable. That's different. So purpose means the why behind the what. I don't want your purpose to be to do, you know, home construction, you know, in the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah, that's the what of what you do. But why do you do that? That's your purpose. So I want you to get to the root of it, because this is going to be really important to be very clear about the company's purpose, so then you can then determine what the priorities are, and then based on those priorities you are able to develop action items, habits, and increase your productivity. So purpose leads to priority, and right now those priorities are shifting. That's why we're here today. It's because you're like, what do I focus on? What's important? What's not important anymore? So that core of your brand will be your navigation tool. It will be your North Star. And I'm going to actually give an example of a pivot that Tara Zerker actually gave online and on Instagram. She's done some really great videos as of late. But defining purpose in terms of a company actually in Seattle, I believe it's a restaurant. Now, Ansel is not in our industry, but it's a perfect example. Doesn't matter what kind of business you have. There was a very, very fine dining restaurant, and they obviously, when this happened, no one can go out. They had 0 sales, and they redefined their purpose, and they said, well, our purpose is to feed our community with good food, good healthy food. And then they said, okay, well, we can't do our standard business model in the short term anyway. So how do we fulfill our purpose now? Okay, in the current setting, you will want to do the same thing and ask yourself the very same question. And so what they ended up doing is saying, well, we can fulfill our purpose by doing these pop-up restaurants around the town, because people still need to eat lunch. They still need the food. They need what we offer, but they can't get it the same way that they used to. Okay, and so they didn't have to lay anyone off. They have tons of business out there. They have three pop-up, restaurants, shop kind of things, and they're fulfilling their purpose in a different way. And they've never been busier. We will see what they do long term. Maybe they keep those pop-ups and still, open up their fine dining establishment again after. We don't know. Short-term pivot, figure out your purpose, and how do you serve and deliver that purpose in a new way that is meaningful to your client's immediate needs right now. Okay, so that means you have an opportunity for some creativity in how you're delivering things. It's actually a really important shakeup. Often before a great awakening or surge or revival comes chaos. So this is mixing up the pot and seeing what ends up being created out of it. It'll be really interesting to see over the next year or two. Next, I want you to think about your client's immediate needs. They are stuck in their homes or not able to go to the office. And with that comes all kinds of needs and desires and challenges. How can your company address those challenges right now and provide solutions? Okay. It does not mean you have to pivot forever. I mean, you've got plans changing, I think it's Hermès, Louis Vuitton, their perfumery in France is not doing perfume right now. They've repurposed and pivoted to provide sanitizer. GM, like a lot of companies are shifting gears, pivoting right now. Does not need to be a long-term decision. Also, reaching out to existing and past clients to reconnect and figure out how you can serve. So this kind of ties in. So if you're reaching out to past clients and just checking in, how are you? Have empathy, and again, in that process, figure out what they need and find a way to restate your purpose. And you can verbalize that with them and just have conversations with them and get the clues. This is fact finding too. Get the clues that will help you to figure out how you can serve them with the skill set and the resources that your company has and the purpose of it. How do you reassemble all of those pieces to create something that's meaningful for them now? And that's really the main way to actually get revenue starting up again, is to retool. And these steps are kind of how you figure that out. Okay, so reach out to past clients and also reconnect with industry colleagues and to collaborate and serve. Here's a good example of something that people might want to consider, because a lot of things have tanked, but a lot of things are in crazy demand right now. And this is, I mean, there are, generally speaking, actually, I think it's a universal thing. I don't even know if there's an exception. We'd have to talk to a historian about that. But I could tell you that more millionaires, more wealth is created in any downturn than any other time. So this is a huge opportunity, huge challenge, but with that challenge comes an opportunity to make a lot more money than you ever have before. This is why after any recession, there are a ton of like new money, new wealth is created, okay? It's that adaptation piece, how creative and adaptable your company is, that will determine whether you survive or not. This is nature. It's just like plants, or animals. So adapt to survive and thrive. Now, an idea might be something like, let's use an example of an interior designer, or even a rebuilder, or someone who's in the client's home, and you've talked to some of your clients and you're realizing a lot of them don't really have the technology or the space. Now they're working from home. They need a desk. They need to be, isolated a little bit in their small space, even though they've got a 5-year-old running around, or, kids doing homeschooling. I'd say, why don't you collaborate with another industry professional that maybe is an expert in home audio and video and knows all the ins and outs, the best technology and tools and cameras and TVs to do remote work really seamlessly and easily, and set up your kind of home office with the AV, and maybe create a little package and reach out to everybody's clients and say, hey, we now have this, quarantine special offering, and we will, for a certain amount, we'll set you up with everything you need to be comfortable, work remotely, and have some real productive space. Another thing I would add in there, and this goes for everyone in the home space, is that one might think that all of this still feels kind of unnecessary, still falling in the category of a luxury versus a necessity. And people are not really spending, most people are not spending on luxury right now, okay? Now, how to turn that perception around is to connect the changes that your service would provide to real metrics. For instance, I know like ASID Association or Foundation and other like research has been done that actually quantifies in real percentages and numbers the impact of design on people. So colors and lighting, for instance, has an actual metric associated to wellness, health, immunity levels, those kinds of things. They know this in hospitals now. It's fairly new, but also there's metrics associated with an office layout, again, lighting, that have real impact, measurable impact on productivity. Okay, so these types of things, I would do the research and figure out how your offering ties into actual metrics that you can communicate in your sales, sales pitch, essentially, to your clientele, saying this isn't just convenience to make you happy and feel better and whatever. If you do this thing and set this up the way in which will help you to do, your productivity will actually go up, 15 to 25%. That's important. Whatever it is, focus, concentration for the kids doing homeschooling, that kind of thing. Also, this is a really great time to catch up on all your thank you notes and do a little gifting. It doesn't have to be, I know everyone's like budgets are tight, you don't want to be spending out big gifts right now, but little things make a difference, even if it's a note card or a bottle of wine or just something to reconnect and build that relationship during hard times. It will go a long way. And the next and final one I have on this is staffing, making wise staffing decisions. And I know that's been a big one for the mid and high level or larger companies, and even smaller companies that maybe have 1 or 2 people. I work with a lot of small businesses and sole proprietors, and even like 1099s, technically you don't have an employee, but people that are on your team that serve you, I still consider them a part of their of your team, regardless of how you pay them or they're taxed. So I want to talk about really quickly what that decision tree looks like and some of the factors that you want to look at in making that decision. Just the really steps, just to break it down for you, is just get really clear on your workload hours needed in the short term, okay? Because you're thinking, well, what's going to happen to my business long term? And don't worry about that. Don't bundle it all into one. Short term, long term, okay? Short term, what is it looking like? Make an estimate, and again, that doesn't have to be one number. I really like ranges. We're going to have a workload between the low estimate and the high estimate. That's your window there, okay? And once you have that kind of workload, man hours kind of number, it's really easy to kind of do the math on this. And what you want to do is take any existing staff that you have, even if it's just 1 or 2 or whatever, and figure out who you can, is high functioning, and hopefully all of them are, but sometimes not. So who of your high functioning staff members can you keep at least 50% billable time, okay? Now, that really is hard to do when you've got admin staff, so you'll have to make some decisions around that, because maybe an admin you can't keep billable because they're just technically not billable. But anyone on the design side technically is, goes towards billable time, whether you bill on a time billing rate or not, or it's a flat fee, they're still billable essentially. Their output is billable. So normal, healthy, everyday, healthy metrics are your design staff or technicians need to be 70% billable or higher. My most healthy firms now are in the range of like generally 90. Design team is 90% billable on most days, okay, most weeks. So if you can keep them at a 50% at least billable rate, then you're able to at least break even and come up a little bit ahead, just depending on how much you bill them out for and how much you pay them. You'll be okay. They're not going to cost you anything, and that means you can keep them, okay? Now, another thing, I was on a teleconference last Friday, I think it was, with another consultant, Lloyd Princeton, and we were doing a conference with Jamie Drake and Martin Lawrence Ballard. And one of the things, Jamie Drake, for instance, has been, doing this for 40 years. And so, he was very clear about what he needed to do. He has a staff of 12, and he immediately implemented a few things, and I thought was very wise. And certainly something we all want to consider, and something people don't generally think about, but this is not our industry. Nationwide, like industry-wide, pay cuts, that it happens. I have a family member and a couple friends, for instance, that work at, they run departments at like Harvard. Back in the recession, they took almost a 50% pay cut during the recession, just to keep them employed and to keep everything functioning. It wasn't awesome, it was temporary, but it kept stability. And that's what people need right now, is that stability. So consider doing a pay cut if it makes sense. Also combine roles. If you've done any cross training or any roles that have similar skill set or kind of personality type required for them, maybe do some combining so you can get the billable time and can consolidate in the short term at least. Also, furlough. So one of the challenges in the past has been, well, if I don't want to lay people off, because then you lose them, and that's hard because then you have to find the people to fill those roles when things pick up again. Furlough historically has always meant it's a long-term unpaid leave of absence. That is not the case now because of the stimulus package and some of the things that are being implemented on a national basis. Now, furloughed is actually eligible for unemployment, which is a new thing. Okay, so that means you can actually furlough someone, meaning long-term leave of absence, and they still will be paid unemployment. And that's awesome because you can say, I'm not probably going to need you for the next 2 months, 3 months. We're going to see what that is. In the meantime, you get unemployment. And when it does pick up again, I still have you as talent on my team. That's important. Okay. So furlough the high functioning team members that you have that you're not able to keep at 50% or more billable time. And for anyone who's non-essential and anyone who is kind of a lower functioning staff member, lay them off. This is a really good time to do that. And keep in mind that sometimes we were bringing on people that were maybe not as well qualified or just not as awesome as we needed them to be because the talent pool was so tight. The talent pool is going to open up again after this is all over. So that's a good thing. So anyone who's not, an A+, you can replace with someone who really is a better fit. Okay. Any questions on that before we move forward, Lisa?
Sorry, I was muted. If I've been working, sorry. At what point do we make the call to reduce hours, furlough, etc.? Do we do this proactively or wait until projects are canceled or until we don't have enough hours for them?
I would project. So you want to look out a month to 2 months, 6 weeks-ish, and see what that is. Like if you're busy now, but you're finishing up a good portion of your projects, and you can see that like 6 to 8 weeks, you're gonna kind of be done. I wouldn't count on getting new projects. Although, I mean, I do have clients that like literally last week signed up with 2 new projects. Also, your pivot, if you're pivoting and providing a new service offering or doing something in a new way, you will have a demand for some business, for work. I can tell you that, for instance, Jamie Drake, who's been through this a few times, was very proactive about it. He didn't have a lot of, clients jumping off permanently. He could see a temporary dip. And because we have the power of the furlough being a situation where they are still getting paid, they're still okay, then it makes it a much more viable option, and it makes it desirable too for the person. Like instead of doing a pay cut, it's like, just stay home, we don't need you right now, well, I'll call you when things pick up. In the meantime, you're getting unemployment. It's a win-win in that situation. So I would just project out a month to 2 months and be fairly proactive about it. I don't want you understaffed, but if you've been doing this long enough, you can kind of tell how busy you're going to be. I don't want you stressed out. I don't want you doing too many things as a business owner. I want to keep you pretty much in your zone of genius. That will enable you to not be doing the things, but be functioning as a CEO level visionary role and looking at the pivoting, looking at how you're structuring your business, looking at your offering, instead of going, oh, I've got to lay these people off or get rid of my staff, and now I'm doing the things and I'm doing the things, and then you're not in your zone. It's not healthy. So I would project and be fairly proactive about it and take advantage of the furlough rules, because it makes that decision tree a lot easier for everyone.
That makes sense. We are learning how to work in this time and doing more virtual meetings, sourcing more online, which can take longer versus going to a showroom, waiting on client meetings to do final selections. How do we tell the clients the design time now will take longer and cost them more, or do we mention it at all?
Well, you always want to think about that outward facing communication in terms of the client experience. Okay, now if I got a call from anyone, really, a design or not, and they said what you were paying for before is going to go up because of, whatever, my client experience level is going to go down, because the perceived value to pay or expense, that ratio has now shifted and not in my favor. So I would do everything I possibly could to eliminate that perception of the diminished value perception, okay? So a couple things that I would say in terms of approaching that is, one, get that efficiency number up as high as you possibly can so it does not affect your numbers, okay? And again, look at short-term versus long-term, okay? I also would say in terms of doing selections online, there are now showrooms doing kind of the remote, like Zoom call tours in their showroom. So they have less staff on the floor, but they do have staff, and you can set up a meeting and you call them with your client, with your team members, whatever, and they will walk you through the showroom on their phone or whatever they're using, and you can literally pull stuff, and they're just your hands. And I have a lot of clients implementing that, and they say it's actually, because I'm like, does that really work? Can you see things side by side, and does that work? And they're like, actually, if you factor in my drive time, yeah, I mean, it was easy and it totally worked. And, you know, you've got to be careful with lighting and things like that. A trick with lighting and color selection is always have kind of a white piece of paper next to whatever is the color. And you would, like, if you looked at this, you might say this is white, right? But if you have a white piece of paper, now you know that it's not white and you can see the color better. So just the little trick. A lot of showrooms are shifting to this, and it is efficient, it is effective, and then they can send you the samples, and it doesn't have to take a lot more time. So also the way in which you're functioning in-house, I mean, I'm like the efficiency expert for the industry, so I have a lot to say on this, but most firms that I go into are, 50 to 70% at capacity in terms of their true efficiency capability than what's possible. So I guarantee you there are areas that you can be more efficient that you just haven't addressed yet. So I would increase your efficiency in certain areas and take advantage of the online shopping as much as possible, like, remote showroom visits. I'll put it that way.
Great.
To keep that number down.
Great. And then another thing, somebody chimed in and said, yeah, I'm doing a virtual meeting right after this with Ferguson, which is great. But then on the other hand, we did get a comment and somebody said, oh, this is great, but what would you say about the supply chain issues? I am finding myself hamstrung because I don't know when products will be available. US manufacturing is shut down, receiving warehouse aren't able to open. Again, every state, everywhere it's different. I saw some girl, one of our clients last night at Target buying some stuff, and I was like, how do you have a Target that's open? And she was like, oh, we're not on mandatory shutdown. So obviously take this information. Everybody is experiencing everything so differently. What her question was is she's saying receiving warehouses aren't able to open 3 months to 12 months. It's the same issue. And I fear which manufacturers will be able to weather this virus. So sending my clients money to them when I don't know when and if they'll be able to produce. One thing I do want to mention is that I have a whole list of vendors from we have a trade program, the Houzz trade program. I just wanted to say we can extend and help you guys. So if you are really needing that list of like what's available, how you can get it, I had a call with our buying team yesterday to get the insight on what's happening with these vendors. Maybe we can do a webinar just that, so that gives you guys insight on where to source from. Right. And I don't mean to steal the thunder, but I had the same concern too, because I don't work directly with vendors. And I had some vendors a month ago saying that they were going to do the virtual walkthrough at an upcoming High Point, but now the rules have changed. They may not be able to go into their showroom. So every day things are changing. It's not really like you can plan ahead. But Julia, what's your best advice to this designer that was chiming in with her, any thoughts, on her concerns?
I mean, I would be calling the companies that you have trusted in the past and get some inside information as much as you possibly can. That is, I think, the one variable that's not just regional, it is global, and you just don't know. And even sometimes they don't know. So that is going to really affect the ability to source with confidence. The only thing in that kind of situation that you can possibly do is make the safest decision that you can possibly make with the information available. So increase your information level. I think your idea, Risa, is fabulous. You want to be talking to the different companies and also to your peers. Hopefully you're part of, different Facebook groups or whatever, and get some resources. There are companies that are pretty stable regardless, and I would stick with those. It's going to require you're probably going to spend a day on it, maybe 2 days, just figuring out what your top 2 choices in any category are that are not going to probably go out of business and are maybe doing things in the, like not bringing it in from China, for instance, you know? So yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of talk about that in our Facebook group. So if you're one of our clients, make sure you join our Facebook group, because I know that everybody's happy to like lend a sourcing hand. If you're like, hey, I wanted to get this from this just to help with your efficiency levels, like Julie was just talking about, lean on your peers, and definitely chime in. I saw somebody posting the other day, like, hey, I tried to get this, it's unavailable. Do you guys have suggestions? And like 10 different people chimed in on, hey, order from here, order from here. So this is a great time to lean on your community. I do want to mention we are at time. I did extend this a little bit because I had a feeling we'd have a lot of good information to cover. I know there are still some questions that I have to cover, and Julie still has 2 slides. So Julie, I want to have you keep going. If you do have to sign off, I do understand. I try to keep this under an hour, but there's just so many questions in these types of webinars right now. So if you do need to sign off, this recording will be available. And Julie, I'll let you hit the ground running and try to
great.
Slides
just really quickly, I just want to say, function at a high level right now. I think most people in our industry have a pretty good set of understanding on this. Get the tech, optimize your home office, set up a team to-do list. That's one thing. The thing that you might not have in place remotely is just do a morning check-in with everybody. And even if that's like your contractors or other people that maybe aren't your technically employees, but people a part of the team, and set up an online to-do list and update it every day so everyone can kind of see what's on the docket for that week, what got done yesterday, and what, you know, kind of what the plan is. It really helps to ground everyone. And lastly, just long-term, I want to say, look at, again, what your clients will need, and how that industry, how their needs are going to shift, and make pivots. Increase your efficiency in terms of workflow, your communication modalities. This is going to help you to kind of bridge that gap between not having enough and being able to charge enough for what you do. Learn new skills right now. This is the time. You want to be thinking about the things that are going to impact your service, your product, if you have them, and your revenue. And video, like that came up the other day, learning video, because video we know converts 80% more effectively than like a website or whatever with no video. So this would be a great time to, you know, get your lighting kit and figure out how to sit on camera, like, which I'm not doing, sit on camera and position stuff and be comfortable on camera. Convert as much of your business to online as possible. Selling product online. I know Houzz has a program where you can sell product online. Doing the digital meetings. It's really just whatever you can possibly get creative about and do online, do it, because that will stick long term. And again, engage in marketing with trusted channels like Houzz. You want to be connecting in more of a grassroots way with your existing clients and past clients, and don't stop your marketing. Stay, but don't be like, we're selling this, and don't make it about you right now, but make it about being of service and really paying attention to what people need and speaking to that in your marketing. It's relationship building right now versus like, look at what we just have. A little bit different vibe, a little bit more compassionate vibe in your marketing right now, but don't stop it. Stay in the top of mind for your client base. And that's really it in a nutshell.
Okay, so one question going back to the employment. If I furlough an employee who is not 50% billable and they collect unemployment, can I still give periodic work as opportunities arise? And if you don't know the answer,
I would say you want to check. I know that has come up quite a few times, and people like making them like a 1099 in the meantime, but you want to look at rules for your local, like your state. If they're working on their own computer and they're able to do that for other people, like there's a few other rules, but there's no reason why someone who's furloughed versus unemployed or laid, you know, well, I don't know. I'm not going to say that for sure. Double check, because they might not be able to double dip and be a 1099 while they're unemployed. That's a good question to look at your local.
And then this is a great question. One key component of starting a project is taking dimensions. Almost impossible to do right now, which makes adapting my business more difficult? Any suggestions?
That's one that you really can't get around because there's no technology that will measure for you remotely other than like a drone that I can think of. The only thing is, you know, if someone is in the space already, if they live there, they do have the laser measuring. So in the case of like a homeowner that's like open to it and it wouldn't feel off-putting and, you know, wants to keep moving, I would send them one of the laser pointer measuring, and I'm sorry for not knowing the exact term on that, but that you don't have to have a lot of skill. And you can be in a remote, like a Zoom meeting or whatever, and walk them through, like you're on the tablet, they're on the tablet, and okay, now walk over there, look at the fireplace wall and point the thing. Okay, great, what's the measurement there? And you're writing it down. So you're doing it with them, and you give them the tool to be your hands and feet there on site. That is the only thing that I can recommend right now where we're not allowed to leave our houses.
Awesome. And then just on the furlough and the employment thing, I just want to verify, like definitely check with your attorney and anything that we've covered today. We will send the link to the SBA loans, but like definitely double check everything. You can also bring in an HR person. Somebody was saying they have somebody for like $125 an hour, definitely worth it. So if you do have all those questions, like consult somebody that specializes in that area.
Yeah, and it's also per state, a lot of this. So there's no universal answer. So you really just need to do your own research. It is very, very readily available.
Yeah. And then how do we handle the risk of clients who may not be able to pay and vendors who may go out of business in the crisis? This was covered earlier. I just want to make sure we addressed it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the big question for all companies in every sector right now. And all I can say is strengthen your cash position as much as you can, because you do not have control over those two things. You literally don't have control. What you do have control over is being in a better position to not get the money that you are owed because people are going bankrupt or whatever will happen. I am hoping, though, I am actually pretty hopeful that with the speed of moving through this first wave of quarantine and people able to get back to business as usual for the most part, and the stimulus package, we're not going to see a whole ton of that. They will probably be slow to pay, just like people are holding off on their, their water bill and utilities and things like that. They're not, going under. I would just be prepared to be in a situation where people are paying you slowly, be compassionate, and be proactive and get them on a payment program, okay? In terms of businesses going out of business, I mean, this has happened to us many times over the last 10 years. I mean, it's been happening regularly. How do you protect from that? You go with your trusted sources, you collaborate and be a part of Facebook groups. You look at who is serving the community very, very well, and who is not, and those who are not going to be doing as well, generally speaking, long term. So I would just be collaborating on Facebook groups and your peers to get some insider information, because you don't really know who is going to be going out of business. Just try to make your best guess and get as much information you can around those companies, and have good insurance, business insurance and E&O insurance, and that's the best you can do.
Yep. What is your opinion on giving a discounted rate to keep clients who are iffy about keeping their project going?
And there's two thoughts on this, and this question was asked to Martin Lawrence Ballard actually during the conference last week or so. And if you guys know Martin, he's serving the very, very high and elite, and he's like, why would I give a discount when I need the money more than ever, and so there is certainly an upholding of a certain standard and value perception. That being said, I think there is, especially in the mid and low tiers of our community, our user base, our consumer base, having some flexibility and some compassion right now, I think goes a long way. So two options. One is longer term payment plans, and maybe a sale. I wouldn't be slashing your prices in half because you need that money, but maybe say we're doing a 15%, 20%. I wouldn't go any higher than 25% lower than usual for the next 3 months, always make it a little pocket of time, or you can say through, like a lot of business, through the end of May or the end of June, we're doing a special just to keep everyone, a little bit more in their comfort zone. And we're all going through a hard time. And we as so-and-so company and fulfilling our purpose of helping, helping the world live more comfortably, we are doing this thing to help everyone kind of move forward through this.
And then should people be putting a new clause in their letter of agreement for timing? I guess
always the case. Always the case. I know in my template contracts that I sell and are part of the business blueprint, there is always a, kind of project going dormant, where if you stay on my books, you're going to get charged a fee monthly just to stay on, basically for opportunity costs. If I've got you on my docket and I can't take on new projects because you could call me at any minute and I'm going to have to jump. So always a timing. And again, you can do what a lot of companies are, and the normal timing just is extended through the end of May or the end of June. Just add a few months onto it.
That makes sense. And then 2 designers actually chimed in here that had good ideas. Instead of discounting, like adding in extras, another idea is to offer something concrete like a space plan for a room or a showroom live consult for a one-time no charge. So that's awesome to add like extra things that you wouldn't generally include in your cost instead of discounting.
And that's actually, just let me add that approach actually is more in line with kind of luxury level brands, is the value add versus the discount. And for a lot of you, that will actually work, and that would be a preference, certainly. But when you're looking at low tier, they're actually, and they're teetering between being able to actually physically pull it off or not. The value add isn't as relevant for them because it's literally, do I have that money in the bank? So look at your demographic and make that decision based on their actual real life situation.
Yep. And then what about installations? We're spending all this time generating new business and adapting, but it comes to actual deliveries and installation, the fun part. Do we just have to wait it out? And how do we have those tough conversations with our clients? Last week, I had somebody saying, like, how do I handle client communication? My clients are getting mad at me because I won't come to their house. I mean, that's an obvious
thing. I know. I've been seeing that. And I'm like, okay, so this is all about boundaries. This is not your rule. This is not your world. You didn't make this the case. You're literally responding as a human and as a business owner. Do not absorb that responsibility. That is not yours to own. Okay. And we're all dealing with the reality. We have to deal with gravity, and like we need to breathe air. That's not your fault. This is not your fault. So you are going to respond accordingly and appropriately, and they're going to have to fall in line with real world rules. In terms of installations, we're all going to have to just put it in storage and deal with the reality of like maybe a higher warehousing cost because you have to hold it for 2 months, and do the install when you are able to do the install. It's just, just be kind and people will get it. And if they don't, then literally that's their own issue. They don't absorb that at all. It's just what's happening.
Okay, and last question, because I know we're so over time. A bird just flew by. It looks like it flew into my room.
I know, an hour goes by like so fast.
Okay, I've been working my way up to the high and elite client echelon. Have a few of those clients, but not fully functioning in that echelon. How do I jump into that echelon without a super strong foundation established? Good question.
Well, usually that's not a jump. I've been doing this a very, very long time. So usually it's like you have 1 foot in one world and 1 foot in the other, and you gradually shift over time. Your messaging on your website and in your marketing, you do want to address directly to the target client that you are working toward attracting, not getting, attracting. And you want to associate yourself, the mid, elite level, luxury level. It's not about getting those clients. It's about attraction and association. So you want to look at where your target clientele is. If they're at the country club, if they're at the ski club, if they're the wine group, if they're foodies and there's a thing, like you figure out what they're connoisseurs of and where they are and embed yourself in one or two of those organizations, associations, country clubs, whatever it is, and become a part of that group, that is the fastest way to get into that circle. And you do need to be a part of that circle, generally speaking, in order to attract that circle. That's the best answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julia, for all of your insights. Very, very grateful to have your time today. And thank you everyone for joining us. I tried to get to everyone's questions. As I mentioned before, really open to your suggestions on what type of webinars you want to hear, you want to see. We have a legal expert coming in, we have a financial expert. All of these questions that you're asking, feel free to email me, feel free to email Julia. I'm sure she's happy to answer questions if we didn't get to all of your questions today. And thank you so much, everybody. We are so grateful for your time and your help and your expertise, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me. All the best. Everyone stay safe and well. Reach out to me, Julia at juliamolloy.com. I'm here to help. So you can schedule a complimentary consultation, a needs assessment if you want. I'm there for you. I know we're going to make it through this. This is a great opportunity, a challenge, but a great opportunity. Look and see where the light is, because a lot of you will actually thrive and do better than ever before if you adapt in a way that is conducive to that. It is possible. So anyway, stay safe and keep the faith, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much, Risa.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.